It's time we give back. Sow a seed and show someone where love's at. Even if you don't give a dime, give your heart and share your time. Help somebody else in life. Give back. Let's give back.
Hello, my name is Hosea James Gavan II, and welcome to this edition of Ignite, Empower, Transform. This is a show where we hope to inspire, empower, ignite our people through the superheroes that we present to them on our show. Today we have a very special guest, one of the entrepreneurs here in the Bronx, Mr. Greg Perry. Greg, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So Greg, I want to start out just asking you very simply, share with us your history, brother.
Well, my history basically started in Harlem. I used to live on between 111 and 112th Street on 7th Avenue. My family is originally from Florida. I'm one of those kids that only child. My family pushed to give me an education. They gave me a private school education in a school known as the Martin School. And the Martin School was run by James Weldon Johnson's niece.
Oh, really?
Okay, yes. And as you know, that was Lift Every Voice and Sing. And one of the things that they had trained us up until the 7th grade was that by being people of color, we had to work 3 times as hard as our white counterparts just to be treated equally. Okay?
So let me ask you a question. So the Modern School was run by African Americans?
Yes, yes.
And so you had the HBCU experience right in Harlem?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
It was at 153rd Street between Amsterdam and Broadway. And I just thought that was normal, you know, for me to go to a private school. And it was my aunt, my uncle, and my mother that pooled their money together and made that investment in me. And they felt that an education was valuable and important. One of the things that was happening at that time in Harlem, you had some gang violence, okay, that was going on.
So give us a sense of the time frame we're talking now.
Oh my God. Well, I'm presently 69 years old. Okay. I just turned 69 last Saturday.
Congratulations, brother.
Thank you. We're talking about in the 60s, in the 50s and the 60s, being in Harlem.
Okay.
I remember.
So this is when Malcolm.
Please, Malcolm. You want to talk about Malcolm? Malcolm used to come through the block.
Wow.
Okay, and say things
because
like
the mosque was
the mosque was 116th Street.
So you were on 115th.
I was between 111th, 112th Street and 7th Avenue.
But that's
walking distance.
Blocks, yeah.
That's several blocks away.
Yeah.
And you talk about Malcolm used to literally walk through some of the blocks, and if he saw us out in the street and if we were fighting or anything like that, he would say, hey, you little brothers, don't you know that you're not supposed to be fighting like this? We.
Do you remember Malcolm
please.
talking to you?
Oh, yes. I not only do I remember Malcolm talking to us, I remember going to the mosque.
Wow.
Okay, and at the mosque, he would tell us that we are the future, and that it was our responsibility to educate ourselves and be the best at whatever we do, okay? And it didn't have to be a college education. He says, whatever we do, be the best at it, okay? And reach back and help our people.
That's the same message that we heard from Dr. King.
Yes, indeed.
So we have 2 men who at one point were kind of almost at opposite ends in terms of their approach to how we should go about creating change. But as they got older, history shows that they got
closer and closer together
in terms of their philosophies, where they were almost getting to the point where they were talking.
The philosophies were coming closer and closer together, but the approaches were different. Okay, Malcolm, at that time believed that if someone hits you, you're going to hit them back. Right. It wasn't a matter of turning the other cheek. Right. And as time went on, I'm not sure if Dr. King, had that same view, but he felt that we should definitely stand up for what we believe in.
Correct.
And not be afraid, you know, of death, you know, in what you believe in, dying for what you believe in. And one of the things I said, and I get kind of emotional upon it, you know, when I was able to get an education, I wanted to consistently reach back and give other people that were coming up an opportunity to learn what I had learned. Okay. And as the years passed, I just felt that eventually I would be killed because what I was teaching, I just felt that many of the whites didn't want us to know.
So, brother, you know, it's interesting, man. I never thought I'd live to be this age, for the same reason that you just explained. And it's hard when you talk to young people today or talk to people today, and we saw Dr. King murdered, we saw President Kennedy murdered, we saw Malcolm X murdered, we saw Bobby Kennedy murdered, we saw his brother in Alabama, his name is escaping me right now. We saw many leaders that took strong positions for righteousness taken out, right?
Yes, indeed.
So if you had that spirit in you, you probably, like, you're the first person that I've heard verbalize this. I felt this way virtually all my life, that I never would reach the age that I'm at, because I felt at a certain point, for the same reason you just described, because if you're willing to die for what you believe in, and if you're willing to continue to progress and promote the values and inspire your people the way we need to be inspired, we felt at some point we would be taken out, right? Because that's what we saw with the people that did that. Medgar Evers is a name that I couldn't remember. But
my first teaching job was at Medgar Evers.
Yeah, Medgar Evers, and that's a name we should never forget. But you know, it's interesting, man. That's a feeling that overwhelms, I'm sure, a lot of black men that grew up in that era, for change and empowerment. And just last night I was watching the Bill Maher show, and one of his guests was passionate about the current era that we're in, and how at some point we have to figure out whether we're willing to die for what we believe in, because we're at that point in history where we have to kind of make those kinds of decisions, because it's that critical right now.
Very critical.
It's funny you should mention that, man. I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's all right, and I didn't mean to get totally emotional about it.
It's from the heart, man.
It's
So you went from the modern school to what you transitioned into? What was your next?
I begged, literally begged my mom and my aunt to allow me to go to a public school. Okay. Because being educated in a private school, you know, the classes are very small.
Right.
And I was always, you know, in the neighborhood, you know, listening to my friends talk about how much fun they had in school, and, you know, they had 30 people in their class and all the other stuff. Right. And when they told me that, you know, I'm saying, like, wow, you know, I like to do that. I mean, but it was go home, you had to study a minimum of 3 hours a day, okay, you know, when I was in the school. And, you know, you had to write, you know, certain projects or whatever. So I was, three things. It was guidance, structure, and discipline were like just constantly embedded into my being, my space. And, you know, I said, well, what would it feel like to have a little bit more freedom in the school? And it just blew my mind when I went to my first public school. It was a great school. I went
which was?
Junior high school 44.
Okay.
In around the 70s or whatever in Manhattan. And the neighborhood was changing. You know, people were buying the brownstones at that time. This is like around, what year was it? Maybe like around like 63, 64, somewhere along there. And I went to the school. I never wore sneakers to school
Right.
because that's how I was conditioned.
Right.
A button-up shirt and a sweater or a jacket. And I would have the other kids in the school, you know, like, why you come to school like that? I'm going like, because it's school,
Right.
okay? And I'm not going to wear my play clothes to school.
Right.
And people looked at me like I had two heads.
Right.
What do you mean play clothes? There's clothes you wear for school, and there's clothes you wear to play in.
Right.
And I was there in junior high school for the eighth, ninth grade. Yeah, eighth and ninth grade. I made Arista, and one of the things I remember was that I had
Share with our audience, Arasto. What is
Arista is like a scholarship type of program, a scholarly program. If you get great grades, whatever the average, I don't know exactly at that time what how high you had to have your average, but if you had good grades, you were called part of an honor society. And I made the honor society, and I remember that a teacher, my homeroom teacher, said to me, "Yeah, you made Arista, but you know, I didn't want you to be there." And you know, I couldn't understand that, even though my family had sent me down to the South, and I saw what segregation was about, and experienced segregation where black water, you know, had colored water fountains and white water fountains, and it was more of a sophisticated racism here in New York. You know, no one called you nigger, you know,
Right.
in the public schools or whatever.
Right.
But it was like a hidden racism that was there, and I didn't understand why this teacher would say, you know, I didn't want you to be a part of Arista, and there was only 3 blacks in the school that had made Arista,
Okay.
and the rest of them were either Asians or white.
Okay.
And I just couldn't understand that.
We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back with your story.
Okay,
Thank you, brother.
no problem.
Hi, I'm your host, Larry V. Stark Jr.
I'm your host, Rachel Cheeks Gavan.
I'm your host, Hosea James Gavan II.
I'm your host, Rebecca Gavan.
Tune in to
Ignite
Empowered
Transform
every Tuesday night.
at 8
8 p.m.
on BronxNet.
Give back, let's give back.
I see the future is really bright for me. The high school diploma is just added to the confidence, and now I feel unstoppable.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
What if you could invest in the future? The future of kids, like a stock. Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change. A whole new kind of investment called Better Futures. When you invest, it helps kids go to college. Believe in us, invest in us, watch us grow.
My name is Sydney, and I'm your dividend.
Welcome back to Ignite, Empower, Transform. We are on set with Greg Peary. Wow, and he's touched our hearts with his testimony in terms of his experiences thus far. Greg, share with us more about your story.
Well, to be somewhat succinct, after I left junior high school, I was able to get into DeWitt Clinton High School. And DeWitt Clinton at that time was an all-male school and big-time sports program. I ran track.
Not to cut you off, but you, based on your age, you were there exactly at the time of Nate Tiny Archibald, my dear friend and fraternity brother.
Yeah, Archibald, okay, B. Hagan. I can't remember some of the other people, but yeah, they had Mr. Bruckner was the coach at that time, and it was a great time period. Okay, I ended up graduating in 1968, and from DeWitt Clinton, I ended up getting into Manhattan Community College, and believe it or not, DeWitt Clinton had a college office that provided us with scholarships, and because of the interviewing process or whatever, they gave me a $500 scholarship, which was a lot of money at that time.
Yes, it was.
They told me I could use that to buy my books or anything else that I needed. Went to Manhattan Community College and was a little crazy. Got down there. I loved it down there. I had a teacher named Nikki Giovanni.
Oh, not the Nikki Giovanni.
Nikki Giovanni. She was my English teacher.
That's
okay.
amazing.
And Nikki Giovanni told us, he says, if you don't want to do the work, get out my class, okay? And you know, I made sure that I was there all the time. She made us read all these books, and at that time we used to have
Can you
this.
share with us some of the books that she made you read?
Well, a lot of poetry, Eldridge Cleaver, James Baldwin. Oh my God, I can't even remember. It was many of the black authors. Before the Mayflower was another book. Now you're asking me all these names.
But this is not. This is again for our audience.
That's going back a while.
Yeah, and these are books that we should all be familiar with.
Oh yes, and we had to do our research.
Soul on Ice, right, Eldridge?
Soul on Ice. Yes,
on Ice.
I remember. It was a lot of great books that they had to read, and from there, here's the crazy part. I loved the school so much. I didn't know, and this is because I guess my background, I didn't know the difference between a community college and a junior college. Only thing I knew about college was either you went to a 4-year college or you went to a junior college. And they called it Borough Manhattan Community College, okay? Right. So to me, during those years, you know, you had the Black Panthers, you had the Last Poets, Black Liberation Army, and all those groups were up, and it was about community, okay? Correct. And so when you tell me this is Borough Manhattan Community College, you know, like power to the people, I'm thinking this is a community school, power to the people, whatever. So I stayed in the school for 5 semesters, and they called me downstairs, and they said, Mr. Perry, you're gonna have to leave the school. I'm going like, I didn't do anything. Why you want me to leave the school? They said, Mr. Perry, you have 71 credits. You only need 60 to graduate. You have graduated. You have to leave. And if you, and matter of fact, at that time, school was free. We didn't have to pay for
That's
it.
Right.
And he said you have to transfer. And I did not know the school was only for 2 years. Okay, and I transferred out the end of that semester. Went to CCNY. CCNY was totally different from Borough Manhattan. At Borough Manhattan, they pretty much held your hand in a program that was called College Discovery. And from College Discovery, we went to CCNY, and I had professors that told me that the only reason why I was here because I was on some special program. They were not welcoming. Okay, that's the easiest thing I could say to you. Wow. And there was situations where we created study groups, and to make sure that we can get through. We asked our upperclassmen to help us or whatever. And we had professors that told us that there was no way that we can get the highest grade in the class, and the only way we get the highest grade in the class is that we must have cheated, okay? And I remember that they made me take an exam over.
So the question that comes to mind, was this racially motivated? Was it
well,
targeting?
I believe it was racially motivated because it was only blacks and Latinos in my study group. Okay, and we got some of us got the highest grades in the class.
But even though the study group was black and Latino, the class was
predominantly white.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So from there, I got very much involved, in the earlier years with a man named Richard Warner, who was teaching me this thing called biomechanics or exercise physiology. And he started with me when I was 16. And I got very heavily involved in it. And one of the things that, as most students know, you don't tell the professor that he's wrong, okay? And one of my exercise physiology classes, the professor said something about foot force ratios or whatever, and I said, excuse me, sir, that's not correct. And why did I say that? Okay, so it didn't go very well. And I was told, no matter what you do in my class, you'll never get an A, okay? And so, but from 1967 on, I used that at the YMCA on 63rd Street to coach young people. And
So this coaching, was this a volunteer?
It was volunteer, yeah.
Okay.
It was volunteer, and the YMCA was very good to me. You know, we had...
So this is you giving back?
Oh, definitely giving back,
Okay.
okay? Because I wanted to teach as much as I had learned. You know, when as a teacher, when do you stop teaching? The answer is never, okay? And
So
and
let
that's
me
what I
ask
wanted
you,
to do.
Sir, that's a spirit that we so desperately need in our communities today. That same mindset, that same desire, that sense of obligation, it was given to you, they blessed you, so you bless others. How do we resurrect that in today's world? Because that's been our challenge.
Well, I think the biggest challenge is getting the young people to listen to what they used to call the OGs, you know, the ones that are willing to, you know, pull your coat. But even though I might want to pull your coat, the question is, are you willing to be coachable? Are you willing to listen? And now, you know, many young people don't want to listen. You know, they'll tell you things that, oh, that was only back in your day. It's not like that no more, okay? And the cycle is regressing, okay? It's not getting better. It's getting worse because, you know, a lot of people are not, especially young people, are not valuing education like we did before. It's all right to do everything, you know, by texting each other, and that breaks down people's skills. If the only thing you could do is text and have a conversation by, you know, going on your phone, what happens when you have a face-to-face? Right. Okay, and many of the jobs that our young people are going to be getting are going to be people that don't come from our communities, that don't look like us, and don't care about what our problems are. So, you know, we have to shake them up a little bit and get them to listen. And one of the problems in getting them to listen is that many of the young people are now lacking discipline because the schools have fallen back where you cannot discipline the kids anymore, okay? And a kid will say, what are you going to do to me? No, you know, I don't have to listen to you. Right. Curse you out and everything else. Right. So if there's no discipline, how can we be effective? And the only way to be effective is by not being afraid to discipline. I mean, that doesn't mean hitting the child or anything else, but providing a consequence for inappropriate behavior. Right. And we're not doing that anymore. Right.
So I work in the school systems and Department of Education, and I see what you say. I see what you just said. But I think the greater problem, and I'm going to put the onus where I think the onus should be, is if you think of 10 successful people, 9 of them were not successful because of their teachers, their principal, their guidance counselor. They were successful because of their parents.
Oh, yeah.
And the values that their parents instilled in them. Mm-hmm. So, whereas we say discipline starts at home.
Correct.
Right?
That's right.
So, what the challenge really is, the school system's only supposed to reinforce the values that the home has already instilled.
Birthing a child does not mean that you're a parent. Mm-hmm. Okay? And what we have to understand is that, you know, too many young people are having children and don't know how to be a parent. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we have to get to a point where we are constantly, you know, fighting to explain to our young people that everything is not about the instant moment. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's about preparing yourself for the future, because young people are our future.
No question.
And we have to, you know, either sit them down, stand them up, or whatever, and let them know what's going on. Right. And I think this is part of my responsibility. And many times you talk about sports, you know, sports is just the hook. Correct. Just the hook to get them interested. Correct. And once we get them interested, then you could talk to them. All right? And one of the things that happened in 1968, Connie Ford coached the Olympic team, but he was also the executive director of PAL. And when I got out of school and went to California for one of the athletes, or some of the athletes that I had taken for a national meet, Connie Ford asked me to come back and work with him at a great organization known as Police Athletic League, or known as PAL.
Absolutely.
And I stayed in PAL. I was only supposed to stay for 3 years. I ended up staying there for 9.5 years.
Wow.
You know,
and is that on the East Coast? Or
no, that's right here in New York.
Okay.
It was in New York at 34.5 East 12th Street.
I know exactly where it is.
Robert Morgenthau at that time was the main person in charge as the chairman of PAL. We had 10,000 kids, and Connie Ford said to me, I'm going to give you the challenge of making a difference. And we had 12, I believe it was 8 full-time centers throughout New York City. And what we wanted to do was have midnight basketball to get, you know, the older people into the gym, and so they could also talk to the younger people. We wanted to have track and field at Randall's Island, where each and every day they had some place to go and do things. But see, what I wanted to do, and Connie allowed me to do it, because we developed another organization known as Westside and Le Mans Track Club.
And we ask you to hold that thought, brother. Unfortunately, for this episode, we have run out of time. Okay?
Oh, wow.
So what we're going to do is we're going to close out this segment, and then we're going to bring you into the next part of our next segment, and then we'll allow you to share some more of your history.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Hosea James Gavan II for this edition of Ignite, Empower, Transform.
I see all your smiles and all the tears showing down on your faces. But I know all the while it's gonna be okay, yes it is. Just open up your eyes, open up your eyes. The sun is soon to shine, the sun is soon to shine. Aim your arrow high and keep reaching for the sky. It's time we give back, so we'll see and show someone where love's at. Even if you don't give a dime, give your heart and share your time. Help somebody else in life. Give back, let's give back. Don't forget, the children are our future. Just teach them well and let them lead the way. It's our obligation, help raise a mighty nation, show for them a better day. Open up your eyes, the sun is soon to shine. Yeah. Aim your arrow high.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Being a dad is an adventure full of special moments.
A cruise?
Surprise! Unexpected moments.
I got this.
And even awkward moments.
Okay, Dad, thank you.
But every moment you spend with your kids, even the smallest moments, can make the biggest impact on your child's life. So take a moment to be a dad today.
What?